Hey everybody, it's Dark, and we're back with actually a little bit more work on the tank game here. So I've skipped a few days doing this to work on the mod projects and everything else. Kind of was more trying to figure out what I was going to do with the game, as there's a lot of unknowns still. I mean, the mechanics are straightforward. I mean, you shoot something, you kill it, it blows up, etc. A lot of that stuff isn't too hard to figure out. One of the big things to figure out is how to make the levels, how to do them in such a way that they're easy to make, easy to build. When by build I mean make all the logic and stuff, and by make I mean all of the geometry, and the final thing, to make them enjoyable. So this is where we've got basically two little micro levels. So this is still the test level I'm working on, and I did a little bit of sprucing up with here. The last video I showed off these new additions here. These are little shooting ranges. I just wanted to make those so I could test inaccuracy of weapons and check to see that they look kind of right with stationary targets. So we've got basically dummy tanks that are always going to fire their weapons. The dummy tanks, I didn't get a chance to show these off. If we can dig through the whole entire mess that is the spawn point system. There is a tank yard in here, and the dummy tanks pretty much are the same body and shape as the normal player tanks. They have the same HP system. I did finally implement a way to initialize the hull and armor, so I don't have to go through and like edit this value and this value down here. And I also made a way so destroy on death is not a thing, and I'll check for is dead. That way, if the tank does die, but I don't want to destroy on dead, I can go is dead and then do the logic I want to actually do. But with the how the weapons fire, as we still have the turret. The turret is still set with an aim script. We have a new aim script, aim at objects. So I can set that to any kind of transformation. So I can have it aim at a lamppost, I can have it aim at a wall, whatever. It's very useful for map building because I don't have to spend a huge amount of time figuring out everything else. I could say aim at it, I can add a rotation offset, say I want to aim at like 10 degrees to left or right. Right now this is set to -90 because we're still having everything point to the right with the logic, yet our objects point up when you build. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there that I still need to get around to fixing. We have no limit rotation whatever on the turret. But then we go down the cannons. The cannons are the same as the player. The difference that is changed is I actually added a script called fire weapon that I can set to repeat, and I can set the fire weapon. This is useful because when we go to do map building, we can have cinematic scenes where we can say I want to fire 3 whole cannon shells in succession, or I can have some other script control this fire weapon so I can enable disable it, so we can have really cool burst of fire. And this would be useful for things like doing the main menu cinematic, which I do plan to do at some point. But also I can have basically opening cinematics. There's the first actual game level should have some opening cinematics in it, hopefully. I'm still figuring out if we're going to do that or not. I'm trying to bring my one buddy in to help me do a lot of story writing, as I'm pretty good at programming and game mechanics. My buddy Grogger is pretty good at making assets and designing levels, but neither of us are good at story writing, and this is where we need a lot of help from other people, is that even though we can write a story, we could probably write a convincing story. I want to write a good story, something that feels pretty good and matches what's going on. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Anyways, we got the little dummy thing. It fires a weapon. It's really cool. It allows us to do cool things. So we hit play here. I'll go ahead and show this off just running, and then we'll go back to show the next part before we go through the whole thing. So these run. We have weapon inaccuracy. I did show that off in a video showing the weapon inaccuracy. This will be played around with. It's just a really simple randomizer. It adds a little bit of randomized angle to the weapon bullet being fired. I am probably going to add other mechanics to the game eventually to push the rounds around. That just push the bullets and projectiles in different directions. We'll probably add some wind effects for that. That'll make the levels kind of fun to play with. There'll be a few levels that'll be really hard to do things. I know we're going to have a few levels that are going to be semi-low gravity, which is going to be hard to do on a top-down, but we can simulate low gravity by having projectiles behave differently, doing weird things. Because the low gravity is going to be intermittent and various things, because the planet that you're actually on in this game is a planet that has not been terraformed very well and has a lot of different issues. The main cities and stuff are in terraformed areas, places that have been kind of fixed to be habitable, but there are areas outside of that that are not habitable that you're going to do things like meteorite strikes in them, low gravity, solar sunspots. These are going to come into the game mechanics in different ways. I'm not sure how much of it we're going to use. We do have the levels designed all the way out to the end now, but we haven't figured out all the details of the levels, like what kind of things we want to watch and do stuff. There is going to be a few really cool stuff that will be nice, and we'll play around with the bullet mechanics and that, and when I get to that. Then as soon as we get time, because if time not allowed, we're not going to have it happen. But we get some randomization, it looks really nice. Another thing to point out is we do shoot from both barrels, so somebody was asking that question to me in Discord and didn't quite be able to zoom in on it. If we zoom in on the scene level, I can actually show this off in much greater detail. Ignore the blue thing, I need to turn that off. But you can actually see it does spawn from both points, and we actually, the bullet, it does actually spawn right on top of the graphics, so I probably need to move it forward. Anyways, the next part since we were talking about the level design, is trying to figure out what's enjoyable. And this is really hard because I don't actually play top-down games on average. Most games I play are strategy games, everything else, but I don't want to build a strategy game because those take a lot more effort to build, for one, and two, I yet don't know enough mechanics about strategy games to build a convincing strategy game, but I do know enough mechanics about shooter games to build a convincing shooter game. And one of the things with a convincing shooter game is you need to make the levels feel good. If the level doesn't feel good, it'll throw off everything else. You get the best mechanics in the world, you can have the greatest action, reaction, be able to jump off walls, and if your levels aren't built right, they're not going to work for you. And there's tons of little tips and secrets and everything else that I've learned from my buddies in the industry and have learned from just watching videos of games. Because even though I don't play games, I can watch others play games on YouTube and on Twitch and see what they do. So this is where I've built two little test levels. I built this one first right here because I was just going to test spawning around corners. I was going to build a trigger here to trigger these to spawn. And then I realized when going into this that there is actually problems in moving through here. So I built a bigger one to see what the size is, and we're going to go through both of them because I haven't exactly tested this one yet. This is brand new, freshly made right before the video. And this smaller one was made a couple days ago and everything else. So we get our tank, we go ahead and start moving. There's a bit of movement thing, and by the way, you can push these around. I left physics boxes on them intentionally just for that reason, that you can push the tanks around. I may even put AIs on them just so they can do stuff. You can see already that the mobs are spawned. Even if I put a trigger on the door, it wouldn't matter, because as soon as I got through the threshold, you would be shot at, and you would start taking damage. Now, of course, these mobs aren't going to be able to do a lot of damage to you, but even if you had energy shield, which I do have on this tank, you would take probably some armor damage and hull damage, and those are not repairable easily in the game. They probably will not be. So you get through here, and look, I don't have a lot of maneuverability. There's not a lot I can do to keep the AIs from shooting me. I'm going to run into their rounds. And you can see I'm can bounce back and forth and keep them from hitting me lightly. And of course, I don't have damage turned on to the AIs, just like a test. But they would be able to keep a good rate of fire on me and still hit me a few times and be able to take my shield down. So let's go ahead and get into the next area. I don't even know what those guys are doing. I think I need to update the pathfinding grid because I think they're trying to path through that wall and the grid is actually cached. So we're going to go to the next area. This is definitely an area where I would want to put a trigger in just for this from happening exactly what's happening right now, where we have a whole bunch of AIs trying to path through me. And you see them actually try to shoot me. I need to add ray tracing to a lot of the weapons. So we're going to go here, and this is a nice big level. It feels like you're actually accomplishing something driving around. And you get in here, and you look, I got a lot of room to move around in, so I can actually move around, maneuver. I'm still going to get shot, obviously, but the amount of room I can have to maneuver is a lot higher. Imagine if these guys were actually moving, which they're supposed to move, and they're not actually moving, which tells me there might be something wrong with the pathfinding. So go ahead, we can shoot these, we can keep shooting at them, we can maneuver around, and we're not running into walls as often as the other areas. This is where I'm trying to figure out how to make the maps and everything else. I'm also talking to my designer about how he wants to build maps and make them enjoyable and stuff. And we're going to be testing out different systems. So right now we're using a tile-based map for this, but we may not actually use tiles for all of the map geometry. So there may be parts that are tile-based and there may be parts that are not tile-based, and these guys are actually going to path towards me. I think you're going to path. I did not mean to accelerate into that. Whatever, you can push things. I'm actually going to add collision damage, by the way, in the future of this. I think I'm driving backwards. Yeah, I'm driving backwards. Let's rotate back around, just so I can drive forward. So there's going to be collision. There also is going to be randomized damage for this as well. And I think these guys have hit the edge of the grid. I actually want to test this real quick and see what's up. Yeah, they hit the edge of the grid. So this blue area is, by the way, the pathable grid for the AIs. And you can see with the little green arrows, this is where they're trying to path, and they basically hit a limit. They've gone, well, I don't know how to get there anymore. This is where I definitely want to work on the AI some more, but obviously the solution to this would be make a grid right here, and say, okay, you can only path within this area, and of course make sure they can't get out of this area. That's one of my thoughts with it. There's also the easy solution where I could just stretch the grid over the whole thing and recache it and do that. But you can see at least what I'm going forward with this and getting the levels running. These, of course, are melee mobs is what these are. Still don't do any damage because I'm doing testing at the moment. But we should actually start getting some playable levels up soon, as the goal is by the end of the month to get at least half of our levels done. At least the rough concept, so we're not talking final versions. Because, of course, this month is June. We have July, August. So July and August are actually going to be the final months, and then somewhere in September is when we're going to release on. Thinking about the end of the month, and then once we'll get the game released, we'll be done. We will have to do much more. Anyway, I'll see you guys later with more progress content, etc.